I have real problems, as you probably know if you've followed my channel for a while, with censorship of any form. And the removal by the BBC of a Doctor Who episode featuring Huw Edwards from the BBC iPlayer, following his guilty plea for possessing indecent images of children, has sparked some debate. But to me, it fills me with a sense of contempt for the BBC. This is very much acting. This is very much closing the door after the horse has bolted. The suppression of art due to the actions of individuals who were involved in the creation of that art. The episode Fear Her, where Edwards provides some sort of commentary. I can't remember the episode now. Of course, you can't find it. And there is plenty of other content on the BBC featuring him, not least the announcement of the Queen's death. Is the BBC going to suppress that too? This situation raises broader questions about whether art and media should be suppressed if linked to a figure later exposed as a criminal or condemned for one reason or another. The situation, the dilemma, is not unprecedented. The contributions of artists like Caravaggio, who was a murderer, Eric Gill, Rolf Harris, Gary Glitter, Michael Jackson, they've all been scrutinised due to their personal misconduct. Caravaggio, the Baroque painter, known as a violent offender, yet his art remains celebrated because he made such a significant contribution to that art, and because there's a distinction between the art and the individual. Similarly, Eric Gill, renowned sculptor. I grew up with Eric Gill statues around me, and I greatly appreciate the sort of Gill Sands, the simplicity of the Gill Sands typeface. He committed disturbing acts, but his work is still used and appreciated, and the idea of attacking the statue of Prospero and Ariel on the BBC is the work of a madman. And various mad individuals have got up there and taken a chisel to that statue. It is absurd and criminal and an act of an act of destructive iconoclasm. These are examples of the tension between the value of art and the moral failings of the artists. The BBC's decision to remove Eric Edwards' featured episode while retaining other works featuring him reflects the stupidity of trying to manage public perception and trying to play catch up with the BBC's failure on such a gross level, paying this man once, although they knew that he was charged, continuing to pay him long after the scandal had broken. As a publicly funded broadcaster, the BBC faces unique challenges, but it's managed by people who quite clearly have the moral compass of a worm, and their vermiculous vacillation is to be condemned. They say they want to balance their duty to the public who fund them through the licence fee with a duty of care to employees and the principles of due process. But I know from my own experience, if they can avoid producing a contract, they avoid it, because it's a lot of work. It's an institution which is riddled with laziness and indolence and self-satisfaction. It's an institution that needs to recognize its duty and its responsibilities. And too often it relies on people being so flattered to be involved with the BBC. I was. And you just go along with this rubbish. The handling of Edwards' case, including the delay in publicising his arrest and the continuation of his salary post-suspension, reflects a complex balancing act that the BBC has got wrong. And suppressing some of his programmes is not the way forward. The broader question remains, should art be censored or suppressed based on the artist's actions? There are some people who argue for the separation of an artist's personal life from their work, allowing the art to stand independently. I belong to that camp. Others contend that consuming such art can be seen as endorsing the individual's behaviour. What utter tosh. Michael Jackson's music, for example, still garners significant airplay despite the allegations against him, reflecting the complex interplay between artistic legacy and moral judgment. If somebody is too big, they're too big to fail. Ultimately, the issue touches on the ethics of consumption and the responsibilities of cultural institutions. The message of Jimmy Savile, clunk click every trip. You don't defy your seatbelt simply because you don't like the image that Jimmy Savile presented in the end. You still put on your seatbelt, and rightly so. This I hope points out the absurdity of this idea of picturing art and communication through the moral depravity of the individuals who produced it. The two things are linked, but not to that extent. Once it's out there, and it's the possession of the people, not the person who did it. George Orwell once remarked, the opinion that art should have nothing to do with politics is itself a political attitude. Art is politics, but art is ours. It doesn't belong to the artist anymore once it's out there. Rather like a piece of theatre. Once it's out there, it belongs to the audience, not to the actors, certainly not to the director. It belongs to the audience. But there is a political nature to art, to creation, to media, and the level to which you can separate the art from its creator is a subject of debate. I certainly take one side. I'd love to know what you think. The debate will continue. The outcome of that debate will shape how we approach art in the context of flawed humanity, on and on and on. But, as I say, when you look at Michael Jackson, maybe you think it depends how big the artist is. It depends how significant and how much that art has got through to the people. As for people like Gary Glitter, who remembers his songs? And now I mention them, I do. But and I never had any interest in them at the time. Or Rolf Harris. A lot of Rolf Harris. Rolf Harris is another very interesting character because his art was himself. He wasn't a great painter. He certainly wasn't a great singer. But he was a consummate performer. Do you ditch all that because of his criminal activity? Maybe. I don't know. I would love to hear your opinion on this. But removing episodes of Doctor Who seems to me to be a form of BBC pomposity. Not the first time.